this soul that comes actually from klipa, meaning that it's not pure godliness at all. It's human. And human means a mixture of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Forget about the ugly. The good and the bad. That's what klipas noiga is, a mixture. So there's a mixture here. Of course, the Alter Rebbe explained to us how we use the good element of the nefesh hamaskelis, the intellectual soul, to allow us to use it in a purposeful, meaningful way. And that was a parent teaching a child, or a teacher teaching a student, was the metaphor that we used. And of all of the powers of the soul that we engage in, that are actually necessary to use in order to be a good teacher or a good parent.
If you want more, and in an intimate and personal setting, together with like-minded people who seek to grow and become their truest self, click the link below in the description and join the Tanya Rabbi community.
In order to influence, inspire, help, guide the child or the student. And that's what we learn till now. So that rational soul is a lower level soul. I mean, truth be said, that if we just follow this teaching and live with this element, that would be quite an achievement, what we've learned previously. However, we're now going into another element of our being, and that's a higher level soul, and that's the godly soul, that's literally a part of God. Now, even though we spoke about, again, previous classes, about the rational soul, the nefesh hamaskelis, and it has, again, powers of the soul, but the distinction is, it's about, the desire that a parent has to connect with their child and to guide their child, or a teacher to a student. This part that is literally a part of God is a deeper, more internal form of connection of the soul, as opposed to, and therefore using a different quality of the same powers of the soul, but in a different manner, because this is the godly soul. Therefore, the intent over here, or the focus, the concentration over here, would be solely for the sake of God. Now, a parent for a child is not solely for the sake of God; it's for their own sake and their desire. Same likewise with a student, with a teacher to a student. So it's not, concentrated purely on godliness. There's an element of it, of course, but this is that it is nothing but godly qualities. In other words, when you're inspiring your child, influencing your child, it's not a love for your child, which is great and wonderful, and that should be there. But this that we're speaking about now, from the godly soul, it's about one's love for God, that expresses, and the great desire that a person has, that they want to cleave to God. So why are they acting kind? Not out of a desire to give something to another, which is, again, beautiful, and right, we're just taking it to a different dimension now. But it's in order to cleave to God. In other words, I'm kind because that's what, says, cleave unto God's attributes. God is kind. Oh, so I want to cleave to him and be like him, so therefore I am kind. Right? So just as God is compassionate, so too we desire to be compassionate. So it's motivated with the desire to cleave to God. Again, that's a much deeper internal motivation, as opposed to, you love your kid and you want to do something wonderful for them, right? But this is purely directed for godly things. And again, the Nefesh HaMaskilas doesn't mean that there isn't a godly element in it, because, of course, inspiring your child or inspiring a student and guiding them and helping them, of course, is a beautiful and wonderful and good thing. We're talking here, though, what is the desire of your soul? So your desire of your soul is, because of the inherent love that you have for your child, so you want to give them something, you want to be kind to them, you want to give them a teachings or whatever it is, that you're giving to enhance their lives. So that's not solely or purely towards God, right? So that's chesed, what it means, because you want to cleave to God. So how does gvura, the attribute of gvura, express itself? Which the internal aspect of gvura is fear, that you experience it only for godly causes. So the Alter Rebbe says, for example, to chastise the wicked, which is interesting. In other words, to chastise the wicked because the Torah says so, right? Or punishment if you're, a judge and you have to administer a punishment, back in the day when the Jewish courts of law had that jurisdiction. So you're doing it solely because that's what God wants of you. So you're acting that way, often as a parent, right? You might be gvuradik towards your child. You may be chastising your child. You might be a little out of frustration, not a lot, right? So here, what does it mean, godly? Godly means that it is because Torah states as such. That's in respect to others, would be the midah, the attribute of gvura, of strength, of that another would be inner strength, that the things that you are permitted to engage in, you sanctify yourself and you limit it, right? In order to rein in your negative inclination, right? By the fact that, we've spoken about this previously, that if you delay a satisfaction to yourself, a pleasure for yourself, 5 minutes, you might think, well, what's the big difference? 5 minutes later, I'm going to have that pleasure. No, it's huge. You've activated, and you do that for the sake of God, right? You do it for the sake of God, to serve God. That in that 5 minutes that I am not eating, or I'm not engaging in my social media for 5 minutes, I've held back. I made a fence around the Torah, right? That's coming out of a sense of respect, fear, awe of God, that you're creating a fence around in order to hold you back from something that, it might be not good for you, or even if it's, you got to eat, you got to have strength, it is good for you, but holding yourself back is sanctifying yourself, in that which is permitted. That's an act of gvura, an act of inner strength to be able to withhold and to do that. And when you do that for the sake of heaven, then that's an expression of the godly soul's power of gvura. And then we go to Tiferes. Tiferes means beauty. So we spoke about that as being compassion to another. When it comes to the rational soul, and that is compassion towards another, that's inherent to the soul, and it, is that a good thing, a beautiful thing? Absolutely. Is it directed to God? No. It could be, not necessarily, right? Not necessarily in the attribute itself. But here, when we speak about Tiferes beauty, so it means glorifying God, beautifying God, so to speak, cleaving to Him with praises, like in prayer, thoughtful meditation, not empty words, but words that are, that are in order to connect to God. That would be Tiferes. Beautifying my connection to God. And then we have Netzach. Netzach means triumph, endurance. This means to triumph and to endure anything that is holding you back from serving God and cleaving to Him. Remember, we're talking about the attributes, and the basic idea of our godly attributes or powers of the soul is to be like God, to cleave to Him. So Netzach means to be triumphant over those things that are holding me back, that are not allowing me to cleave to God. Those things that are within me, right? Or those things that are outside of me. So, for example, King David was used his attribute or power of Netzach to battle wars for the sake of God, not for his own self-glory. So likewise, if we are battling something, right, not for our own, glory, usually, that's why a king goes to war, for his own self-glory. But here it's, no. You're triumphant, you endure, you wage the battle to overcome for the sake of connecting to God. Then we have Hod. Hod means to acknowledge. When do you acknowledge something? When something is greater than you, transcendent of you. So here it is about being self-effacing and acknowledging God. That God animates and creates everything. And the truth is, everything before Him is nothing. There's just but Him. That's true self-effacement. And through the fact that we don't comprehend everything, and it's truly even to comprehend the concept of everything, that's nothing before Him. God's the only reality. It's a little difficult to comprehend that fully, of course. But the fact that we acknowledge that, and we genuinely give ourselves over to that absolute truth, that is a humility of Hod, of acknowledging that which is greater than us. And as a result, the word Hod also means to be made. It means from acknowledgement means to express gratitude as a result of the great favors that God bestows upon us. See how everything is directed towards God here in the godly soul. So from that humility, just parenthetically, I'm saying this now, that when we're full of ourselves, so we don't acknowledge something transcendent of us, God, and therefore we have expectations from God and from others. I'm expecting a nice, beautiful day. I'm expecting having wonderful things showered upon me today, from above and from you, right? That's not Hod, right? That's not acknowledging something transcendent. Really, there's nothing else but God, and therefore, in that sense, there's no sense of self being deserving. And if you're not deserving, you're not expecting, and therefore you're capable of now acknowledging and appreciating and having gratitude for everything that's bestowed upon you. When we think about it, there's a lot, right? And therefore we would praise God for that. And the word Hod also means majesty and splendor. We would then bring out the splendor of God. That, wow, look what you have bestowed upon me, acknowledging that which is, and being grateful for it, and therefore bringing out the splendor of God as a result. That's all part of Hod in that one word. Then we come to Yesod. Yesod means foundation. As it says, Tzaddik Yesod Olam, the righteous are the foundation of the world. What does this mean? Well, is the soul is bound up with the foundation of life, with God. I'm just, that part of that we're connected to the foundation of life, God Almighty. And therefore having a wondrous delight and a pleasure in the divine. In the divine, having that immense pleasure of connection. That's what Yesod is. As we explained, Yesod from the rational soul was the connection that the parent or the teacher makes to the student, when teaching eye to eye, and therefore there's a connection, and you feed off, the more there's a sense of connection, the greater is the giving of the teachings, of the wisdom, and the more of it is actually absorbed by the student because of that sense of connection. Right? Here it is in the divine light, in the divine manner of the divine soul. So, of a sense of a real deep, profound connection, a foundational one. And that creates a great desire and delight to connect. Connect to who? To God. And then finally, Malchus. The attribute of Malchus is the sovereignty, which means an acceptance of God's sovereignty, having the yoke upon us. God is king, and we're here as a servant to the master, out of a sense of awe, sense of respect, fear. So those are the 7 emotive attributes of the divine soul. Now, that divine soul, of course, the fact that we can have those emotions are because they are fed something. What are they fed? An understanding of the mind. As we know, the intelligence of Chabad, Chochmah, Bina, V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, is what feeds the 7 emotions that give them and propel them into self-expression. So, what are the 3 aspects of the divine soul's intelligence? Chochmah, the source of intellect. Is the source of intellect to apprehend and appreciate God. It's the source of intellect. It actually transcends it. Right? It is the capacity of the mind to connect ultimately through it to then bring it into Bina, into understanding, and to contemplate our connection to God, God's realness in the world, and that is through bringing it into down, across, and deep. Right? In other words, all of the details of the point of a teachings, let's say, and to be able then to plummet it, bring it down, bring it across into many particulars that we can deduce one idea from another idea because we understand it so fully. So much so that funneled through Chochmah Bina, then it brings it to Das, an awareness of godliness in such a real way that then through Das it funnels it into the emotions that brings us to an awareness of God that should be felt in the heart, that felt or expressed in the 7 different powers of the emotional makeup of our heart, as we explained, of our soul, and that will lead us to a love and awe of God. love, the two levels, one, the greater level, that's say delight in God, the lower level, which is that's an appreciation that the true nature of things is God's spark that animates it, and that's what we are drawn towards. And to a sense of respect, fear, the presence of God, or the higher level of totally not feeling your own awareness, not to such a place that you don't even have a sense of self-awareness. And as we explained, that's really a gift from above. So Das vests itself can bring into both types of. So Das is the funnel that takes what we understand and brings it to the emotions in two ways. One, it funnels directly from what you're aware intellectually and brings it to the heart. And another, so it connects mind to heart. That's what Das does. That's the concept of Das, is connecting. But Das also connects between Chokhmah and Bina, and the higher level is that what you know in Chokhmah is a reality in Bina, that they are bound together. That's a hard one. That's like the very lofty, righteous souls are bound up in such a way. In other words, it's like the idea of the Rebbe once by Purim for bringing said a lot of l'chaim, and he just told the story that someone said it, that he once also said a lot of l'chaim, and he went like this over his head, and in just that moment, the effect of the l'chaim is totally like nullified, totally gone. And he explained, because when a person has a sense of fear, if they're drunk, if they're really frightened, drunkenness leaves you. So here he just went like this, and others, because usually you'd have to meditate upon in order to arouse a sense of God's presence. But in Chokhmah, it's already there. The point is there, that in that brief moment of just running his hand over his forehead, is able to generate that sense of awe. Why? Because the higher level of Das connects not to the emotions, but it connects that the seminal point of Chokhmah is immediately connected to Bina in a way that it just creates a reality in that moment, not something you need to process, right? Usually we need to process things. I know I need to process things in order that I can bring it into my heart and to deal with whatever I got to deal with. So it takes me time. And that's Das. Das is when you're focused, let's say on something, an issue, a problem, a relationship that is a difficulty. And so you're taking that which you are, and you're trying not to let your emotions control you. So you're trying to take it with your mind and process it and understand it and deal with it, appropriately. So you're doing it in what you understand, take it into Das to make it real for you, in order that it can bring you into an emotion, right? That you can sense it and feel it. Well, it takes time. It's not simple. That's the lower level of Das, right? To connect, right? To be able to take what you know and to bring it into your heart and make it, heartfelt. The higher level of Das is the Chokhmah, has the awareness in a transcendent form, right? Has the bittul, has the self-abnegation to its source in the divine, that it needs now to bring it into detail and to funnel it into Bina, that he should have an understanding, and that's what we usually do, and therefore it takes time to really, unpack it, to understand it, and then bring it to your heart. But the higher level is able to take that and bring it into Bina instantaneously, like I said, and what the Rebbe did, like that, instantaneously, that it's affecting, because it's bringing a union between Chochmah and Bina in a way that changes reality. That concludes the 15th letter. So the Alter Rebbe wraps up and says, well, or in summary, from my flesh shall I behold God. So now that we have an understanding of the makeup of our soul, this gives us some measure of understanding of the supernal spheres, the divine attributes above, and God, how he conducts the world, how he literally conducts his world. So now we have a bit of an understanding. Okay, now if you have questions, please ask. We did this, something that is like very powerful and needs a lot more, shall we say, introduction or, involvement in. But it's beautiful. Okay. I don't see any questions. I hope I explained this well enough. Not that there shouldn't be questions, so still ask. Don't be bashful. 2 question marks before. Thank you, Julia. Yes, June, very true. All right. Amazing. You're all amazing. As always. Rambam coming up. By the way, my wife has a class tonight for women on the regular Zoom to join us. Surely. I don't know what you mean changing to Judaism. Okay. All right, folks. I'm Rabbi Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Gedeshim. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you, Tanya. Have an amazing, wonderful day. And a wonderful Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul, birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe, our teacher of Tanya. It just means a special day to rededicate ourselves to the learning of Tanya and to allow it to invigorate everything about us. Have a great day. Thank you.